Hello, my friends, Arya here. Thank you very much once again for joining me as we cover another dark and disturbing case as we continue our exploration into the question of whether or not the worst monsters are no longer hiding in the dark, but if they're right here, hiding in the light of the technology beaming right into our faces. I mean, at this point, what can I say? Another week, another disturbing crime to cover with you all. Another set of amazing animations, though, so shout out to Phia, our animator, as always, who does incredible animations for these videos, a member of our audience and a part of our Discord community. So, thank you very much, Phia. Today's case was once again suggested by one of you, and today's case is definitely a not so fun one. I know we had a few laughs in the last video, or at least I did, at the image of a man complaining because his penis wasn't cooked properly. What a sentence. But today's case definitely is a very... That sigh honestly just sums it up. Because today we will be looking into the case of Grant Amato, a man who slaughtered his entire family for a cam girl he had never met in person. Let's begin. On January 25th, 2019, 911 received a call from an employee at Orlando Regional Medical Center to report that their coworker, Cody Amato, had not shown up to work that morning. Cody, a certified registered nurse anesthetist, was due in surgery that morning but never showed up, something out of character for the 31-year-old. His coworkers called authorities asking for a well-being check. They told dispatchers that Amato had gone 5 years without missing a single day of work. They added that it was also highly unusual for Cody Amato to not answer his phone. Around 9 a.m., shortly after the call, authorities sent a Seminole County officer out to do a welfare check at the Chuliota home that Cody shared with his parents and younger brother, Grant Amato. After no response from inside the home, the deputy broke the deadlock and walked through a back door. That's when he first found Chad Amato, 59, dead, laying on his back on the kitchen floor with blood pooling all across the ground. As the deputy made his way further into the Amato's family home, he came across Cody Amato, who was lifeless, curled up in the fetal position in a storage room, still wearing his nursing scrubs. Margaret Amato, 61, was found dead in the home office. She was hunched over the desk with her head resting on the keyboard. Family pictures were placed all around the desk. It would later be determined that Margaret Amato, who was sitting at her desk in her home office, was the first to die that afternoon when she was shot once in the head. Then, when her husband Chad Amato arrived home, he was shot twice in the head. Cody Amato, the couple's second oldest son, was the last one to die when he was shot through the face. I mean, truly for me, with that kind of crime scene, I honestly will find you. Okay. On January 26th, 2019, Grant Amato was found by investigators and agreed to sit for an interview. Amato told detectives that he left the home later that evening, but denied having anything to do with the death of his family. Amato also claimed to authorities he decided to spend the evening in a nearby parking lot by Publix before a job interview. Amato told authorities that the next morning he drove by the house and saw news trucks and police cars at his parents' home. According to authorities, Amato was asked by an investigator why he didn't try to contact his family members, but he produced no answer. Now let's take it back a bit. From all accounts, it seemed Grant Amato was down on his luck and struggling with a rough patch in his life. However, in spite of all this inner turmoil, his family stood by his side through it all. Grant and Cody were almost inseparable, best friends. They did almost everything together. The high school weightlifting team, nursing school, and even anesthesiologist school. However, on June 21st, 2018, Amato was working as a registered nurse at Advent Health Orlando when 8 empty vials of propofol, a surgery sedative, were found missing from rooms that Grant was overseeing. When hospital staff confronted him, Amato expressed suicidal thoughts and the police were called. Amato was arrested and the hospital was intending to press charges, but public records do not indicate charges were ever filed. With all these roadblocks and career setbacks, Grant Amato started spending a lot of his time online, playing games and live streaming. Amato was able to find solace in the arms of the internet, as well as the newfound love he had met on it. But this wasn't your typical modern era internet love story. He met his boo on MyFreeCams, an adult website specifically for cam girls. As a quick heads up for any of you who may not be aware, I did once perform on a cam site and made a fair bit of money.
Do you want to spank me or do you want to be spanked?
What a day that was. Grant developed an infatuation for a webcam model from Bulgaria named Sylvie, also known as Sylvia Ventisut. Venceslavova. Okay. Grant developed an infatuation for a webcam model from Bulgaria named Sylvie, also known as Sylvia Venceslavova. Sylvie would dance and model for her audience. Amato would watch her for hours nearly every night. He would buy $600 worth of tokens at a time to spend viewing Sylvie, which cost approximately $10 per minute to view. $10 a minute. Whoosh. Amato's infatuation with Sylvie grew deeper, and he started sending her things to use in her shows, like clothes and sex toys. Grant would ask his parents and his brother Cody to lend him money to help promote himself on Twitch, but he was actually using the exuberant amount of money to spend on his newfound love. The relationship Amato had established with Sylvie intensified, and he started taking money from his own family, which put even more strain on an already fragile relationship. It's estimated that Amato stole more than $200,000 from his family to help sustain this online relationship. Grant had taken $60,000 in guns from his brother. Grant had also stolen $150,000 from their father, Chad Amato. Chad had to take out a second mortgage on the house to help cover Grant's debts. When his family found out about the thievery, their first reaction was to support him and get him the help he needed. Honestly, that just makes this even more tragic to me, right? That he had a family who was still willing to support him despite the fact that he stole more than $200,000 from them, which is just... According to ABC News and a filed police report, on December 20th, 2018, Grant's mother Margaret and Cody reported him missing. When they spoke with authorities, they expressed concern that Amato might be depressed and possibly suicidal due to flunking out of school and the loss of his job. The officer writing the report would end it with, "There is reasonable concern for his safety and mental health at this time." Eventually, Grant was located at another family member's house in Apopka. On December 22nd, 2018, the Amato family showed up in the driveway unannounced and drove Grant to a voluntary rehabilitation clinic for internet and sex addiction in South Florida. Grant reluctantly agreed to complete the 60-day addiction program, but after just a couple of weeks, around January 5th, 2019, Grant left the treatment program. After returning home, Grant apologized to his cam friends after Sylvie learned the truth, discovering that Grant wasn't the independently wealthy online gamer he had presented himself as. After this, Sylvie would then cut ties with Grant. Furthermore, Grant's father sat him down and handed over a list of rules to abide by if he wanted to stay in the home. The rules were as follows. Grant's phone would be shut off. He'd have to see a therapist. He'd need to get a day job. He would be solely responsible for his debts, and he was no longer allowed to spend hours on end online at night. According to the Orlando Sentinel, a note written on the sheet of rules said, "Family relationship abuse beyond tolerance. This is a promise. You better heed the warning. It's real." Chad Amato made it clear to his son if he reached out to Sylvie again, he would be kicked out. A line on the note had been scratched out but was still legible. "You chose a stranger, physically non-existent, over family." Little did the Amatos know that line and the choice that Grant made would soon be punctuated with even darker emphasis. "Did you leave the house with your brother Cody looking like that?" was the question asked by investigator Ava Moltari as she showed Grant photos of his brother's corpse during his interview with authorities. Grant looked down and covered his eyes. He was then shown 2 more photos. "Or did you leave the house with your father looking like that? Or your mother? Is that how you left your family?" Moltari asked. "No," stated Amato. After being briefly released on January 28, 2019, deputies with the Seminole County Sheriff's Office located Grant at a Hampton Inn in Lake Mary, Florida, and they arrested him for 3 counts of murder. On July 23, 2019, according to the Orlando Sentinel, during opening statements in the trial of Grant Amato, prosecuting attorney Stuart Stone told the jury that hours after the killings, Amato remained in the home, carefully planting evidence like handguns and shell casings to point the blame towards his brother Cody and away from himself. Grant Amato's defense attorney, Jared Shapiro, claimed there wasn't sufficient evidence collected. He told the jury there has been no physical evidence tying his client to the killing, and furthermore, the prosecution's lack of alternate suspects wasn't enough to prove Grant committed this crime. On July 30th, 2019, after more than 20 witnesses and hundreds of items of evidence presented to the jury, the prosecution rested in the Grant Amato case. And after several hours of deliberation, on July 31st, the jury found Grant Amato guilty of first-degree murder. Judge Jessica Rexedler sentenced Grant Amato for murdering his parents and brother to life in prison without parole. Grant Amato cried in court as he heard victim impact statements, including one from his brother, the only surviving member of the family besides Grant, who stated, "Though they are gone, Chad, Margaret, and Cody were amazing people." Honestly, I find that case a rough one. You know, as someone who's very close with his family, very close with my brother, you know, the thought of killing, you know, your parents, your siblings. There's no justification for murder ever, but it would be that it's one thing if like his family were abusing him and, you know, he had a terrible relationship with them. Again, no justification for murder, but the fact that his family were so loving and supportive of him despite all the issues he had, and he just slaughtered them. You know, as we're saying, that slaughtered is the right way. He slaughtered his family for a cam girl. If we're going back to our question of whether or not the worst monsters are no longer hiding in the dark, but in the light of the technology beaming in front of our faces, Grant Amato is one of those monsters. I mean, this is a man whose relationship with the internet led to all this death. And I think it's safe to argue that if the internet didn't exist, or if Grant didn't have access to the internet, you know, his whole family may very well still be alive today. Either way, as always, thank you very much for taking the time to sit with me as I dive through this story. It's very nice to have someone along for the ride, so I'm not just going through this on my own. So I appreciate your time. And as always, if you have any cases you'd like to suggest and send my way for me to potentially read in a future episode, please be sure to shoot me a DM, as I definitely love going through them as much as they may horrify me. Either way, thank you for your time. And as always, take care and stay safe online.